Welcome to our PTL Fantasy segment where we teach you how to crush your friends. Nice. In this weekend's fantasy draft, got our wonderful, amazing, awesome stats guy here. Optimal Tim, how you doing?
Optimal now, I guess.
Optimally. All right, good. So let's talk about how fantasy works. Once again, to remind you guys, there's two different league formats. There's the best game in a series or the first two games of the series, regardless of whether you won or lost. And average fantasy points per game, though, of all games played is what we're going to kind of talk about here, which should be a reasonably good predictor for player performance.
Yeah, pretty much if you're going to be in a two-game league, you're going to value teams that want to win those first two games.
2-0, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And then if you're in the best game league, these numbers will also accurately reflect that. And our predictions are going to take into account, you get wins, you get points.
Okay, so reasonable expectations here. Let's talk about, first off, players that you really want to have in your lineup, studs.
All right, well, the first stud you're definitely going to want to run comes from the jungle, and he's on cloud 9. So it's not high, it's Meteos.
Oh, almost got that one.
Yeah, he's actually has the second highest fantasy points per game from the jungle. And the big factor in that is the point that even then Cloud9 loses, he still puts up a very good fantasy performance.
Okay, next up?
Next up, we have his teammate in the bottom lane.
Lemon?
No, it's Sneaky.
High? Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's changed a
I
lot.
could have said high both of those, too.
And now they have 2 sub-supports, too. But Sneaky's the guy who's had the most fantasy points per game in both leagues, the 2-game league and the best game league. He looks like he's going to continue that performance when they go up against CLG and Phoenix 1 this week, who give up over 20 points per game to opposing AD carries.
Okay, who's last?
Well, this one's a little bit of an interesting one. It's G2's Perks. Now, he hasn't been picked up a lot in every single league, even though he had a dominating performance last split. And he's going up against Splyce and Roccat this week, who give up the 3rd and 4th most points to opposing mid laners in the LCS.
Of all 20 teams.
All 20 teams, EU and NA combined. So it looks like he's going to have a big week this time.
All right, so big point owners there. If you're one of the lucky guys who can still pick those guys up, then go for it. Next up, let's talk about duds. Now, these are popular plays. These are guys that are in over 70% of fantasy leagues owned already by owners and are sucking.
All right, so the first one, it's kind of a standout on Team Liquid. It's going to be their AD carry Piglet. He has a 93.8% ownership rate, and even though he may put up a couple of points this week for you guys against CLG, he's also going up against Echo Fox, who only let up about 13.47 points per game. That's the 13th lowest in the league.
Oh, wow. Who's next up, then?
Next up is going to wind up being Svenskeren from TSM. Now, it may be a little interesting because TSM's dominated NALCS, but they're going up against Immortals and Apex, 2 other teams that are also 2-0 in their matches. So against Reignover and Shrimp, you got to look out for if you have Svenskeren.
Okay, so popular player, probably going to be good, but chance they lose. Who's next?
Exactly. And the last one is a little bit more obvious for you guys. It's going to be Forgiven on Origin. He's no longer playing, so you don't really want to play him. And his substitute, Xpeke, while he can be played as a mid laner or AD carry, might not be your best fantasy option, so you probably want to bench both.
Well, it's nice. At least he gets to go the entire split as 0-4 given, and it won't change anymore, so I think it's perfectly lining up, just like G2 and A. It's great. We got all the memes here. Okay, so let's go on to the sleepers. Players that can be very good, but are honestly quite risky if you need some new players, you guys to look for, or at least keep in your bench for maybe a better day. Who's up?
First up is Schalke's mid laner, Fox. Now, Fox put up 21.8 fantasy points per game. At least that's what he's projected to do this week. In his wins, it's even higher. So for Schalke, they're going up against, I believe it was Splyce first off. So they're going to have a pretty good week.
Okay, so that looks pretty solid for them. If you need a mid laner, go for that one. Who's next?
Well, we got a pair of Apex players coming up next. It's going to be Keen first in the mid lane. Even though he had the highest projected fantasy points per game in both leagues, in his losses, he only put up about 7.9. So if especially you're in one of those 2-game leagues, he's a risky pick going up against TSM and Envy this week.
All right, hard opponents. Who's last?
Well, last is his top laner, Ray. Now, Ray is a little bit of a special case because he could blow up or he could crash and burn.
Yeah.
So Ray is a little unpredictable. In his losses this week, he only put up about 6.7 fantasy points per game. So he may be somebody you pick up and hold on the bench for later.
And again, against 2-0 teams in matches coming into this one, so maybe you wait until they have some easier opponents, you know, like a Liquid or something, and they can smash those guys.
Exactly.
All right, thanks very much. Now, guys, that's going to do it for this week's Fantasy Showdown. Thank you very much for your help again, Tim, Tom, whatever your name is. We're just going to do that one real quick. And remember, use all that knowledge because knowledge is power. Use it wisely.